You're on, Dave.
All right. Hell, this is Independent Outsider with you once again to remind you that 3 weeks ago, Henry Cuellar won his primary against Jessica Cisneros. And it was not because Nancy Pelosi endorsed him. I didn't agree with that endorsement. I vehemently opposed that endorsement. But the reason that he won was because fewer people voted for Cisneros in that district than for Cuellar, which is part of the reason that Pelosi continues to support him, because the voters in that state are voting for him, despite the fact that he is the only Democratic House rep that is anti-abortion, that is quote unquote pro-life. So stop criticizing the Democrats for that. Yeah, it was a strategic move that I disagree with vehemently, but I do understand it. And he still has to run against the Republican in that race, and we'll see what happens. One other thing that I disagree with in regards to the Democrats and their strategy is to fund far right-wing candidates in order to have them win in the primary and then beat them in the primary. May have been a sound strategy 10 years ago, but this is a completely different atmosphere now. They tried that with Trump and they lost, and we are in a really big mess because of it. Claire McCaskill, back 10 years ago, she put in what's called a legendary advertisement, backhandedly promoting her opponent, Mr. Aiken, in her 2012 run to get him to run against her so that she could beat him in the general. And it worked. Now, there is a candidate for Illinois governor, Darren Bailey. Same thing. There are Democrats who funded that campaign. Do I think it's better use to fund Democrats that would help? Yeah, I do. Do I think that this is an extremely risky move? I do, but I don't think that it is for quote unquote nefarious purposes. I do think that people are going to misinterpret what people are doing. I'm hearing that the Democrats are just trying to promote controlled opposition, or lose on purpose so that they have a reason to exist. No, it actually is a strategy to win.
Right, and it's a strategy that's been employed in the past successfully. The problem
many
times. But the problem right now is the right is so extreme, and this is not then. Okay, we
right.
are so far removed from even 2016
right.
that it's scary. And so that means we're eons removed from 2012. I can tell you that.
Right.
And it was used successfully then. So you have to understand that, both sides do these things. Both sides strategize, jockey for position. That is the way the system is set up. But right now, in this particular climate, this is a very risky proposition, because the one gating factor is this, and it's something that cannot be denied. The right wing always shows up to vote. The only way the right wing ever wins is when the left wing doesn't show up to vote.
Yep.
You need to understand that. If the left doesn't show up to vote, the right wing is going to win every time. You can't just sit back and say, we got this one. Because you know what? Let me give you a little case in point. In Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy held the senatorial seat for 46 years. When Scott Brown announced his candidacy, everybody said, you know what? This is going to be a shoo-in. A lot of people didn't show up to vote. And the candidate on the Democratic side lost to Scott Brown. We had our first Republican in 46 years in that seat. And he was a disaster, okay? The person that knocked him out was Elizabeth Warren. So understand this, and that's because he was such a disaster. Everybody came out for Warren. So everybody needs to get it. All right. If you don't vote, the right's going to win in November.
There are heavy red areas in Illinois. It's not just Chicago. So that actually scares the hell out of me. J.B. Pritzker is doing an okay job. So I hope that Pritzker wins, and I think he will. But it is a risky proposition to elevate someone of that caliber that is that far of a nut job, who tells people after a mass shooting just to enjoy themselves and time to get over it. So a couple other things. Mr. Biden, can we stop criticizing Mr. Biden for contemplating appointing a right-wing judge? He thought about it. He thought about doing it as a strategy and as a, he was going to not compromise, but he was going to do a trade-off. I do this for you and you do this for me. The problem is Republicans aren't trustworthy. He didn't do it.
Right.
He thought about it. Chill.
And by the way, I'm going to just tell you this. It's Kentucky. And right. I will tell you, they have a Democratic Party governor, and it was a Democratic governor that pushed back on this with Biden, by the way.
Right.
But they have a Democratic governor, but I can promise you right now that if he appoints a liberal judge, the legislature in Kentucky is never going to let that happen. It isn't. So you need to understand the reason why things happen in certain states as well. Kentucky is about as backwoods as you can get.
But again, he thought about it.
Right.
So he didn't do it. So chill out on that. The last one, Biden isn't doing enough. What do you want him to do? He put in an executive order saying exactly what he said he was going to do to protect the rights of people to get what now is legal in terms of abortion drugs, or I think, what is it, the morning after pill, and there were some other medications.
The abortion pill.
Preventive, yeah. And also to protect women from going from one state to another. Right. Also, he is contemplating, he's thinking about declaring a health emergency, which his advisors are basically advising him against it because it's not worth it and it's going to get blocked anyway, and it's a waste of time and money in their mind. He has advisors for a reason. They're not a bunch of people on Twitter and Facebook and Twitter Spaces. They are lawyers. They are experts.
He's giving if he does this, it does not give abortion rights back. You need to understand that. Right. That's not what this is about. He has no jurisdiction at the executive branch level to overturn the Supreme Court decision. There is no doing that. All right. When Roe was first codified and put into the Constitution in 1973, the GOP could not overturn that decision. It took them 40 fucking years. You need to buckle down for the fight, folks. And the fastest way back to your abortion rights is to vote Democrat for November so that a law can be passed. Or if you want to do it sooner, tomorrow morning when your legislators return to their offices, you need to start calling them and telling them you want an exception to the filibuster, because the only way that's going to happen is if the Democrats are united, and there are Democrats who don't want to do that. I'll name two of them, Sinema and Manchin. Get on the phone. If you're in West Virginia, call his office. If you're not in West Virginia, call his office and call her office. And in the meantime, you know what? I know Elizabeth Warren is behind it. I'm going to call Elizabeth Warren tomorrow morning anyway. Do it. Okay, this is how battles are won.
And by the way, Roe isn't the only fight. Bruin isn't the only fight. The Supreme Court is now supercharged to affect gerrymandering and basically to allow it nationwide. This is a case coming up next year. So be aware, be prepared. I'll see you guys on the long show.
Marcian, we're done.
Yep.